Hello, and welcome to the Art of Selling Online Courses. We're here to share winning strategies and secret hacks from top performers in the online course industry. My name is Monica Badiou, and today's guest is Crystal Johnson. Crystal is a toddler boy mom, a Facebook, Instagram, Meta ad strategist, and the certified life and success coach. She's passionate about helping other entrepreneurs, especially female coaches and course creators, find the right ad strategy for their business and scale using the power of Facebook and Instagram ads. And today, we're going to talk about promoting your course business with ads. I'll be asking Crystal some of the most common questions we've received on the topic of ads from our clients and podcast listeners. But before we jump into today's episode, I have something exciting to share with you. If you want to grow your email list quickly, you need to check out our Double Your Email List guide. Having a bigger email list makes everything else in your business easier. It means that every time you do a promotion, you'll make more sales, make more revenue, and help more people. With this guide, you'll get a step-by-step process to everything you need to do to grow your email list. If you follow it, you'll very quickly experience a boost in your lead magnet conversion rates and see more people joining your email list. We typically see an increase in new subscribers each month of between 2 and 10x. So grab your copy of the Double Your Email List guide right now at datadrivenmarketing.co/double and watch your email list transform. All right, let's get into today's episode. Crystal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Monica. I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, let's start. I have a hard one. What are some common challenges course creators face with advertising, and how do you help overcome them?
Ooh, this is a great question. So first of all, the biggest thing with advertising is before you begin advertising, unless you have just a massive budget and you're okay with using some money to test with ads, you want to make sure that you have your funnel dialed in. You want to have your email marketing set up. All the pieces that are going to make you successful after the ads get into your email system. We can get you leads all day, but if you don't have a converting offer, we could get you tons and tons of leads, and then you may end up with no sales. So you want to make sure that you have a product that sells, something that people want, and that you've tested the funnel, tweaked your messaging, and really just dialed in so that you can start out with massive success with ads. Like I said, you can test with ads, or you can use ads to grow your email list if you're just building up and wanting to build up to a big launch. But if you're going for sales, you want to make sure that you have everything already in order, funnel working properly before beginning advertising.
Okay, so what's a minimum they should have in terms of working funnel? You mentioned having a working offer. What else?
Yeah, just making sure that they have their follow-up system in place, their sales system. Like I said, we can get you leads, but if your email sequence isn't optimized or your follow-up system, depending on if you have people book calls with you or whatever your funnel looks like, you just want to make sure that you have it dialed in so that all the leads that we're getting you are actually going to convert for you, rather than, having a ton of leads and then not having your follow-up system in place, and they're just sitting there, on your email list, but they're not being engaged with, they're not being nurtured or followed up with. Because that's the main thing too. Like I said, if you want to start with ads and just build your email list and you have like an awesome nurture sequence built out while you're creating your course and getting things in order, that's totally fine. But I just don't want people to come in with the expectation of like selling if they just whipped up a quick, sales page and they haven't really like tested anything as far as selling the actual offer. So yeah.
We see many of those situations, and what's interesting is that the results add up almost immediately after you have that kind of follow-up sequence installed, and you have it does the heavy lifting for you.
Right.
Because what we've seen is not many people are willing to invest from the beginning, right? So if we're using a tripwire funnel, for instance, we're going to see maybe 3% of those people, so new leads, immediately converting after getting a lead magnet, and it's only like 3%. So you really need
Right.
to figure out how to convert those people in the back end.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Okay, let's talk about identifying the right audience for course creators, right? Because there's always this discussion between, do we go super niche, do we go broad, do we go based on interest, do we build lookalike audiences? So how do you identify and target the right audience for course creators with ads?
Yeah, another great question. So targeting, one of the first things I do when I bring on a new client is I do audience mining. So I really dive deep into their ideal client avatar. I have them fill out a really lengthy, fun questionnaire, learning all about their ideal clients. And that way I can really research their niche, look up and see what's even available to target in Facebook. Because sometimes you might have great ideas of like, oh, let's target people who are interested in this or this, and then it's not available. So I always go through and just make like a big list, and I go into the back end of Facebook and actually type in, to see if it's available for targeting. And then I create different interest stacks. So that's for like interest based targeting. But with audiences, it's always important, as with everything else in advertising, you always have to test things, right? So I always start out testing not only interest based audience, but also different lookalike audiences, and you can segment those, down to specific different lookalikes, or you can create lookalike stacks. So there's lots of different ways to do it, but testing. And then you also mentioned the broad interest, or broad targeting without the specific more niche stuff, and that's always good to test too. So I really start out testing all of these different types of audiences, and it is just going to depend on what works best for that particular client. Sometimes lookalikes work amazing, and sometimes it's more interest based audiences. I really like to start out, usually with course creators, even testing up to like 10 different cold audiences at a very low cost. And I use video ads to do that. So a little secret sauce there. But you can see like how many people are watching the video to different percentages, 25% up to 100%. And that really helps me dial in on which audience is resonating the most with this particular client's content. So, yeah.
Nice. So I
Yeah.
heard audience mining and
Mhm.
having a customer avatar, which is
Yes.
something we keep preaching, and I'm a copywriter, and that's like the sexiest
Mm.
thing you can show me.
Yes.
Not many
Yes.
people have
Yes.
it. And then
Yeah.
you also mentioned testing with ads. Are there any
Mhm.
other tools or methods that you use for audience segmentation, like top five things?
Mm. Do you mean as far as like when I'm actually running ads, or when I'm just like brainstorming and getting started?
I guess both. I mean,
Both.
there is definitely a beginner audience listening to this. So
Yeah.
even talking about brainstorming segmentation, I think that's an important topic to have,
Mm.
because when it
Mhm.
comes to ads, most people are like, well, it's so easy. You just go to Facebook, you click through things,
Yeah.
and here you go. A sponsored ad is running.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I can talk a little bit about both. So within Ads Manager, I mean, it's really neat. Like I said before, so you can segment, for instance, for a lookalike audience, we can build a lookalike audience off of your email list, off of your Instagram followers, your Facebook page likers, all these different segments of, lookalike audiences. So you can test all of those individually, but what sometimes is even more powerful is to stack them all together. But what I like to do is test them individually to make sure they're all good. Then, when I know the best performers, I like to stack those together to create a really powerful audience. One thing over the past at least year, maybe a little bit longer with Facebook, is we have been seeing that larger audiences work better, because as we all know, like the Facebook algorithm is getting stronger and stronger, and like more AI is coming into play, to where Facebook is really able to find the right audience for you if you give it time. Which is, by the way, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make in advertising, is they run an ad for a few days and they say, oh, this isn't working. They turn it off, and they could have turned off what would have ended up being an amazing ad. But it has to have time, because Facebook is essentially testing different segments of these audiences as your ad is running, so one day it might test this segment and then it's moving on and it's testing so that it's narrowing down the whole time too. So working with Facebook and just giving it time to do its thing is helpful as well. For someone just starting out thinking about like I said, I mean, the best thing to do is just hop online. I mean, look up different people in the industry that you're wanting to target, or what your audience is interested in, whether it's celebrities or speakers, authors, kind of thinking outside the box sometimes, like I've had to do with different niches, if it's hard to find interest-based audiences that align, even Googling like different songs that may go with, I mean, there's just all kinds of things that you can target depending on your niche. So just playing around with it really and getting, like I said, thinking outside the box, getting curious, thinking of new ways to target people. What kind of stores are the people that you're targeting interested in? Do they shop at Whole Foods, or do they shop at, and just thinking about the different behaviors of the audience that you're trying to target as well. You never know what's available to target in Facebook. I mean, they're always changing it back there too. So sometimes things that you were able to target in the past, you can no longer target. So staying open-minded and willing to test new things, I think, is the most important thing.
I have two questions related to that.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
you mentioned building an audience from your email list, Instagram,
Mhm.
and Facebook followers. Is there a
Mhm.
minimum? I mean, how big should that audience be to actually, make a dent in your
Yes. Yes.
strategy?
That's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up actually, because if you are using an email list, you do need 1,000 people to be able to do a lookalike audience. So 1,000 people within the same country as well, which is interesting. I'm not sure exactly why they do that, but that's a little, yeah, tidbit that you'll find as you're playing around with Ads Manager more, is sometimes you're not able to create the audience that you want to create right off the bat. So for someone new, starting with interest-based audience may be the best way to go, or testing that and a broad audience. Broad in a sense of like, I would still narrow in on maybe like the country, the age range, give it some parameters. Like if you know that you work with young entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, or whatever it is, and then just not put in any interest. But yeah, that's a great question, because sometimes you are limited on what you can create. Or if you don't have a big, if you're starting out and you don't have a big Instagram following and stuff like that, you may not be able to create the lookalike audience right off the bat, because Facebook does, obviously with the lookalike, it has to have a certain amount of people to work with to create that audience. So that was a great question. Thank you.
And how about time? So we start running an ad campaign and we
Mm-hmm.
invest, I know, $100 per day. How
Mm,
long
okay.
should we wait before
Oh,
we tweak the campaign
yeah.
if the
Another
results
good.
are bad?
Yeah, okay. So I like to always wait at least like 2 or 3 days. I mean, minimum. I usually like to wait, more like 5 to 7 days, unless things are just maybe looking super terrible, and then um turn it off sooner. But I have seen, I mean, giving campaigns time, like I said, I had a client and we were starting out, first time running ads for this particular offer. She's a service-based business, and we started out, the leads were coming in around $44. But I knew that if we left the campaign alone, we were going to see it start. And now we're getting leads for $5. So if that gives like a good example of like how time, now that took a few weeks, it was coming down, but I could see that it was coming down too. So monitoring the campaigns, but just resisting the urge to necessarily like turn it off right away if you're not seeing like amazing results right off the bat, because it does take a few days, like I talked about before, for the Facebook algorithm. It wants you to get results, so it's trying to find your people. But looking at things like your click-through rate, um, specifically like your outbound click-through rate, depending on the type of campaign, like if you have a, I don't want to get too far down the can of worms on that one, but if you're sending ads to a landing page, outside of Facebook, looking at the click through rate and things like that too are going to help you make that decision of like, okay, this just isn't resonating at all. But I would still wait like 2 or 3 days minimum. If you're starting with $100 a day, though, I wanted to mention too, that's a really big budget, you know? So starting with a bigger budget for that for someone brand new to ads, you should be able to see results a lot faster than if you're starting with like $5 to $10 a day, you know. But I don't want people to think that you necessarily have to start with like 100. You can start small, but if you're starting small, you'll have to give it more time, if that makes sense. So starting with a bigger budget, you'll get results more rapidly, depending on like the price point of your leads. Because if you're starting with $100 a day and you're getting $5 leads, you know, you're gonna have that coming in a lot faster than if you're starting with $10 a day and you're getting $5 leads. So lots of factors come into play.
I think there's a question there about a correlation between how much you're paying for leads versus how much you're selling your course for, right? Because at the end of all of this, you still want that specific lead to convert. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
getting a lead for $5 and then you're
Mm-hmm.
selling a course for $500,
Mm-hmm.
is there any like mismatch or disconnect there? I mean,
Um, I mean, so the leads that I was referring to, like $5 leads, is more like a freebie, like a lead magnet campaign. And then if you're actually going like for a sales campaign, I mean, it will vary like how much per purchase. But so I guess it depends on how you have it set up too, because I've run ads for someone before and we were getting like, you know, $15 leads, but she was selling a $500 evergreen product. So with that, I mean, breaking even with something like that is what you want to do right off the bat. So we were getting $15 leads, but it was taking her $500 to get a sale. So she was spending 500 and then getting a sale, which is actually good for starting out with a brand new evergreen webinar funnel. So I think just having proper expectations too when you go into advertising, you know, knowing that it's going to take some testing and tweaking, and just being able to get break even is like an amazing thing starting out, because you're basically getting free advertising. You know, you're building your following, you're building your email list, and that's people that you can later retarget to. So it's kind of twofold. Like the sales were almost like a bonus to what we were doing, whereas if we have like a big live launch going on and we're running webinar ads and we're getting leads for, say, like, I mean, for webinar ads, anywhere from $8 to like $12 is really good. So say we're getting like $9 leads, but we're selling a $3,000 product, you know? So there's just, it's a lot of moving parts, like I said before, on exactly what we're doing, because that involved like a full live launch where we were doing 3 live trainings. We were doing replay ads, reminder ads, you know, all kinds of things to support the live launch and making the sales. And this was a proven offer that my client has sold time and time again, you know, so something like that. I mean, we had 90 sales on a $30,000 ad spend. So she's
nuts.
making 10 times at least return on ad spend. But obviously, you know, if we have beginners and stuff, they're not going to be quite starting out with that big of a budget. So lots of
Okay,
moving
so
parts. Yeah.
so we'd have kind of two different types of strategies for evergreen and then let's say live launches, right? And it makes complete sense, obviously. I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to learn more about the evergreen strategy. So,
Mm-hmm.
what we usually do with our clients is after we've optimized their funnels and we demonstrated that the products have product market fit and people love the courses, they're super high quality, and we kind of hit the ceiling with how much organic traffic we're getting on the website or from social media and the opt-in rate we're getting there, we're turning our eyes into ads, right? And the way we
Mm-hmm.
do things, we help our clients have maybe one live launch, like a big new product launch per year. But
Mm-hmm.
everything else is kind of recycling their existing offers. So once a month, we do a promotion. But that means that every month we need to have new leads coming in so that we have enough people to whom we could sell that old existing course. Now, when we
Mhm.
hit a ceiling with the organic traffic, we look into bringing new leads with ads. So we're looking at two kind of segments. One is cold audience, actually three segments. One is a cold audience, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Second is, you know, warm audience, basically people who are already following us on social media, but um, they're not on our email list. And then three is people who are on our email list, but they haven't really purchased anything, but they did visit the website. So I'm curious to hear, what's your take, and maybe like a small tip for each of these segments. What would be the best, easiest, lowest hanging fruit if you'd like to target a cold audience? How you would find those people?
Ooh, okay, good question. So definitely, first of all, as I'm sure you already know, like selling to a warm audience is gonna convert higher. Like it just is. They already know you. So really what I would recommend at something like this is to be running ads to grow your warm audience. I mean, because you're running ads to cold traffic, getting them in your email sequence on a freebie, and then we'll have more warm people to target with the actual sale, looking for the sale. So that's kind of how I would approach that versus just trying to sell directly to cold, because the way I do things is always thinking about just the whole marketing funnel. If we get people in, like we can bring in our cold leads, warm them up by giving them free value first, then trying to sell them later is going to convert higher. So that would be kind of my thoughts on that. And I think, was there a third? Were you saying about the lookalike too? Were you asking?
So I was also kind of hinting at retargeting people who are
Oh,
on the
you were
email
talking.
list and they
Okay.
visited the website but they haven't purchased. So
Yeah.
retargeting is
Okay.
kind of I feel like it should be getting more attention, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
usually
super
getting like a
powerful.
small percentage of the ad budget. So
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know, I do find that retargeting doesn't quite get as much attention as it should, right? Yeah, because that's kind of where the magic happens. Because if you've been running ads and you're doing your organic stuff, and then you use that and retarget those people. I mean, using things like testimonials and retargeting ads is super powerful because these people already know you, they're already familiar with you, but maybe they just need to hear from someone else how amazing your product is. So if you have, like, especially video testimonials are great. I also like to use like FAQs, like frequently asked questions slides, like carousels for retargeting, or like objection busting, things like that, because with different parts of the marketing funnel, people need to hear different things to be able to move forward to make the purchase. So they might just need to hear, like I said, from someone else that your product's amazing. And after they see a few retargeting ads, maybe that's going to be what finally brings them to make the purchase. Or they have questions on their mind, but they just haven't taken the time to, like, go and look at your website to find the answer. So if we bring it to them, they go, "Oh, okay," and we just went ahead and answered the questions that have been holding them back from making the purchase. So I love using those ads and retargeting for sure.
What are some limitations to retargeting, you know, in terms of like budget? I assume there is a limitation
Yeah.
or like a threshold for how many people you need to have had in your tracking data. I forgot
Yeah.
what that's called.
Oh, like your pixel tracking, or
Yes, yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Pixel.
Yeah, that's another great question. So definitely with retargeting, we don't even have to spend as much there because we are targeting a smaller audience. So one thing I always keep an eye on with retargeting is the frequency. While we do want it to be higher for retargeting ads, because we want, especially like if we're in like an open cart period, we want our ads to be like almost kind of reaching the threshold of like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing this all the time. Whereas you don't want that. earlier in the funnel. You want to wait until like they're really warm and close to buying, and then like retarget them a lot. But the frequency is going to be higher because our audience is smaller. So we don't really need much of the budget, maybe like 10%. I mean, it all depends on the whole overall strategy, but I'd say like a good just rule of thumb is about 10% of the budget for retargeting, depending on your goals and everything. But you don't need to spend like tons of money on retargeting because it's such a smaller audience.
Nice. I like that. I like
And it
that.
won't spend too. Yeah, like you said with the limitation thing, like if you try to spend, I mean, you can try to spend more on it, but it's just not going to spend the full amount of your budget
Hmm.
sometimes too. Yeah.
So you mentioned before testing with ads, and you mentioned using testimonials or FAQs for retargeting purposes. Do you see that there is a preference for a specific ad format when it comes to online courses? Like, does
Mm.
this audience, people who purchase online courses, do they prefer video, carousel, or static images to convert at any stage of the funnel? So if you have cold audiences and you're promoting a lead magnet, what works best there? A
Yeah.
video, a static image?
So this is another thing where you really want to test different things. So I always test like static image, carousel, GIF, and reel or video when I'm starting out with my clients. But even, I mean, throughout the funnel, always testing different things is good, but I have found specifically for courses or even freebies, the mock-up template works really really well because these are intangible things that we're selling, sometimes maybe tangible, but for them to actually like get a visual of what all they're going to get, showing it on either if you have some PDFs or just the screen of the computer screen in your advertising, that's going to make them feel like they can actually like touch it and get something. So I really like to use those. They work really well. Overall, I would say that's definitely one that you want to always test is a mock-up.
Ooh, that's a nice idea. Very cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about when you're promoting a webinar?
A webinar. Um, yeah, I've seen some really cool ads. I mean, because I, as an ad strategist, I still get ads and I'm always like seeing ads on my feed. And so I always keep in mind what really grabs my attention. I love when people do the videos like of scrolling through the course, do like a video of you like actually scrolling through. Maybe it's just the lessons, showing like an overview, like a behind the scenes kind of sneak peek at what's inside. I love that. So that's probably like my favorite type of video for selling like a course.
That's cool. Okay, I have another question, and this is related to what you just said about testing different formats for your clients. How do you approach A/B testing different ad
Yes.
formats? Because we're talking about video, then we're talking about carousels. Do you split test against the ad format itself, so one carousel to the other, or carousel to video? How do you do it? Same copy,
Yeah.
same call to action, but different format. What's your take there?
Yes. Yeah. So it's in testing, it is really important to keep a lot of the elements the same, like you just mentioned. So maybe you pick out like your strongest, copy or what you think is the strongest copy and headline, and then pair that with different types of creative. So have a video with that same copy, a graphic, and I like to do it like that to keep things really clean. So I know, okay, this is performing better. Now you can take that, if it's say the static graphic, now you can take that static graphic and now you can try out three different headlines or, three different versions of copy. But every time you're changing an element, like you want to make sure that, you have to keep some the same. It's like variables, right? To make sure that that's actually what's making the difference. So it can get kind of I mean, it can turn into a lot because when you're doing ads too, depending on your budget, you don't want to have like so many variations of the ad. Like I usually like to stick with 6 or less. So if I'm doing, three different creative, maybe 2 versions of copy, that makes 6 ads. But if you're doing like 3 versions of copy and like all these different creative and 3 different headlines, I mean, that would, in order for you to test all of that, it would be like 12, 15, 18 ad, so it can get, depending on the budget, you may be able to do that. But I like to keep it smaller so I can really see what's working. And then once I hone in on that, then test a different element, or test it with also with different audiences. I always like to test different audiences with the same variations of graphics and copy or creative, so that I can see too amongst different audiences, is this performing well? So there's a lot of different things you can test, but yeah, just trying to keep it as simple as possible so you know what's really working, because sometimes it could be as simple as like changing the hook can make a huge difference. So maybe not even the whole piece of copy, but just the hook can make things, dramatically different for your performance.
Here's a question for you since we're talking about hooks. Do
Mm-hmm.
you use AI in writing those ads? What's your take on that?
Yeah.
Do you have
Um,
good experience with using AI
yeah.
for writing hooks?
So I do like to use like chat gpt, for instance, for brainstorming, or if I'm like, reading through like a giant sales page and I want to really hone in on what the most important parts are, like I might like copy and paste that and say, hey, can you tell me like the key points of this? But I do feel like, I mean, and I know there's tons of different AI now out there, so some of it may be even better, but I always find that I can kind of like tell when things are written by chat gpt. I mean, maybe if you've trained it up really well, but I like to use it for brainstorming, or maybe like if I've written a piece of copy, just to say like, hey, can you check this and see if how effective it is, or can you give me a shorter variation of this? But I always put the human touch on it. I read it out loud to myself again, and then like, I mean, you're a copywriter, so but I do think there's a place to use AI, because you can make things happen really quick, or like you said, brainstorming new hooks and stuff like that. But I feel like it tends to use a lot of the same, those buzzwords that Chat GPT likes, or just like kind of like a clunky, what's the word? Like a corny kind of take on things. So I do use it sparingly in my ad copy and stuff, just to help me, but more so just to help me maximize the effectiveness and bounce ideas off of it, more than actually just like, hey, give me this and let me plug it in, because I don't think that works very well. So yeah.
100% agree. But
Yes.
here's a question for you. So this might be like a misconception of or a myth. Do you see that there's any correlation between using similar copy on your ad to something they're gonna see on the landing page? So
Yeah.
can we use like the same headline or call to action we have on the landing page in the ad? And is that something that can improve results?
Yes, that is an excellent question. I always want to make sure that the headline on the landing page and the call to action matches what's on the ad, because we don't want people to get confused. Like, we want it to be as seamless and as easy. We want them to see the same message when they get to the landing page, because if they're clicking on an ad and it's like a completely different thing than what's on the landing page, they're just going to be like probably confused and like maybe a little overwhelmed as to what they're actually signing up for. So I do think it's really important to make sure you have the same message. I mean, maybe you could use like a shorter variation of the headline that's on the landing page or something like that. But I do like to stay really consistent, and sometimes even use the exact language, from the landing page in the ad. If there's 3 bullet points, maybe even use make it very cohesive, so people that click know exactly what they're signing up for. Because that's the other thing, we don't want them to feel like it's like a bait and switch tactic, like they're clicking for one thing and then they get there and it's a whole different product. So yeah, definitely important to keep those two cohesive.
Nice. And since we talked about AI, are there any emerging trends or new strategies that people are trying right now in digital advertising that course creators should be aware of?
Hmm. Oh, that's a good question. I do think, well, as far as AI goes, I don't know. I was trying to think of in terms of AI. But something else that came to mind that I wanted to mention was I was just reading an article yesterday about how consumer behavior is kind of shifting a little bit. You know, we've all heard these big promises of $10,000 months and 100K years and all of these money claims, money claims, money claims, money claims, especially if you've been in the online space for a while. I feel like people are kind of going, like, I don't want to hear it anymore because they know that it's not quite as simple as it's been sold to them. So that's one trend that I wanted to make sure and mention today because I also resonated with that very much so. You know, having been in the online space for a few years, it's like everywhere you turn for a while, it seemed to be these six-figure claims, six-figure, you know, and it's very attractive to think of, but it's the reality is a lot more goes into it than that. So that was one thing I wanted to mention for sure. I can't think of anything right now. I'm sure, I mean, I've been seeing more stuff about AI, of course, and I'm sure people are going to start using it more to create graphics and videos and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not really seeing like a ton of that yet as far as the ads that I'm seeing. So, yeah.
That's an interesting point because I've actually seen ads, like the visuals created with AI. And I can
Mm,
tell what's created with Dali, but
yeah.
Midjourney has been getting so crazy specific and amazing if you know how to use it, that I think it's very difficult to even spot the differences anymore. I mean, Midjourney
Yeah.
isn't like generating, hands with like six fingers anymore.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, maybe I'm just not even realizing it yet. You know, maybe I'm seeing some that are AI and I'm just not knowing because it's getting kind of scary good. Yeah. It's kind of
Yeah,
wild to watch very
exactly.
rapidly.
Okay. I have one more question for you. What's your best tip for someone who's considering running ads to their course business?
Yeah, so my best tip would be definitely, like I said, make sure that you have all the moving parts really dialed in before you start ads, unless you just have the budget to spend for testing. So sorry, we have a little visitor in the background. Um, but yeah, that would be my biggest tip is just to make sure you have all the moving parts of your funnel, your email sequence built out, everything ready to go, so that you can fully optimize like your ad spend and get the most ROI from it.
Awesome. Thank you, Crystal. So, if people heard this episode and they
Mhm.
want some more of your wisdom, where should they go?
So you can come visit my website, of course. Check it out. It's www.cjandcocreative.com, or come follow me on Instagram. I'm not super active there, but I'm trying to get better. But I do have some, some lives and stuff that I've done there, and I like to always share like results that I'm getting from my clients. So if you want to see real time ad results, because I know that's what people love to see, like actual real results. Come check that out, and yeah.
That sounds pretty cool. Thank you, Crystal, for sharing these awesome insights with us today. And for the person who has listened to this episode, if you found it useful and want to get future episodes, then please subscribe wherever you listened.